I was the unforgettable first love of her life. Yet I watched her walk down the aisle in a white dress to marry another man. While I lay dying in a rented room, she swiped away the news of my death. On her honeymoon flight, she dismissed the notification like it was just another piece of spam. But when she returned to our apartment, she sobbed uncontrollably, replaying our memories on a camera and begging on her knees for me to come back. Everyone called it the tragic story of a poor boy's misplaced devotion. No one knew the truth. The terminal cancer diagnosis was a forgery she ordered herself, and the funeral was a performance I directed. And from the shadows, I watched every single moment of her descent from a radiant bride into a woman completely unhinged. I was the unforgettable first love of her life. But right in front of my eyes, she accepted another man's proposal. While I lay dying in a dark, damp, rented room, she was putting on a pristine white gown, walking down the aisle on Robert's arm. On their honeymoon flight, she calmly swiped away the news alert about my death. But back in her apartment, she broke down completely. "James, please come back. Ava, there's no going back for us." After Ava and I got together, we became something of a campus legend. After all, everyone loves the story of the rich girl falling for the poor boy. I had planned to propose to her on her 25th birthday. I was supposed to be the one on one knee, but I ended up as just a spectator. Because the man Ava truly wanted to marry from the very beginning was her fiancé. During the years we were together, Ava always celebrated 2 birthdays. One was a grand, formal affair for her high society friends. The other was a small, intimate celebration that was just for us. While I was meticulously decorating my small apartment for the proposal, Ava, dressed in a designer gown, was already stepping into an exclusive 5-star hotel. 5 hours later, my setup was finally complete. I sat on the floor, a wide grin on my face, as I pictured the moment Ava would say yes. A sharp ping from my phone shattered the daydream. There was an emergency at work. The person who was supposed to cover a gala had to back out, and they needed me to go instead. I put on the suit I had bought for my proposal and drove to the hotel. "James, you made it." Sandra greeted me with a warm hug. I had met Sandra, a senior colleague, during my internship. Sandra was a powerhouse at the company, known as the Whiz Kid. Maybe it was because we came from similar backgrounds, but we hit it off right away. After a bit of small talk, Sandra laid out the plan for the evening. Our main goal was to pitch the company's services while networking to maintain and grow our client base. With the proposal on my mind, I planned to get my work done quickly and slip out early. But the moment I stepped into the ballroom, the sheer opulence of the place took my breath away. I grabbed a glass of champagne and made a beeline for our target clients. I worked the room, making small talk and raising toasts. After a few rounds, I had managed to build a rapport with most of them. A sharp pain suddenly shot through my stomach, and a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I pushed through it, grabbing a glass of white wine to make one final toast before heading out. Just then, the ballroom lights dimmed. A single spotlight illuminated the top of the grand staircase. As a soft piano melody began to play, Ava appeared in the light. So this was Ava's birthday party. For a split second, I almost believed she was walking toward me. In that moment, it felt like we were the only 2 people in the room. Bathed in the soft light, she was breathtaking in her gown, her makeup flawless, her smile a sweet dream. She looked too beautiful to be real. My hand instinctively went to the ring box in my pocket. The cold, hard feel of it jolted me back to reality. A man stood in the center of the hall, holding an enormous bouquet of roses. The moment she saw him, Ava's smile widened, and she quickened her pace down the stairs. In front of everyone, the man pulled a ring from the bouquet and dropped to one knee. "Ava, will you marry me?" The room erupted in a roar of cheers and applause. I just stood there, frozen, watching it all happen as my mind reeled in confusion. Ava covered her mouth, her eyes shining with happy tears. This was the exact scene I had played out in my head 1,000 times. But now that it was real, the man on one knee wasn't me. "I will." Ava's clear, familiar voice felt like a knife twisting in my gut. It hit me with the same force as the memory of her smiling and calling my name on that perfect summer day years ago. I set down my glass and turned to leave. I had only taken a few steps when a voice called out from behind me. James, aren't you going to stay and congratulate us? Ava's bright, melodic voice echoed across the ballroom, stopping me in my tracks. I had no choice but to stop and turn around awkwardly. The cheering died down, replaced by the weight of dozens of eyes sizing me up from head to toe. Wearing her signature smile and holding Robert's arm, Ava walked slowly toward me. I clenched my fists until my knuckles were white, my thoughts a tangled mess. "This is my friend from college, James," Ava said with practiced grace. "And this is my fiancé, Robert." I had never been to one of Ava's high society birthday parties before. I had never seen this version of her, polite, poised, and perfect, with an air of subtle detachment. Looking at this Ava, who was both familiar and a complete stranger, a storm of emotions churned inside me. I couldn't tell if it was hurt or anger, and I had no idea what my face was showing. But I knew she wanted this night to be perfect. I forced down the sharp, twisting pain in my gut, extended my hand, and managed a polite smile. "Robert, it's a pleasure." In response to my friendly gesture, Robert just smirked, a look of pure contempt on his face. My hand was left hanging in the air, and my face burned with humiliation as I stood there, unsure whether to lower it or keep it extended. "So, you're James," he said. "Thanks for looking after Ava all these years." The words were polite, but his tone dripped with the condescending arrogance of a man who had already won. In that moment, I knew he was fully aware of what Ava and I had been to each other. I glanced at Ava, hoping for a word, any kind of support, but she just stood silently by his side, small and docile, completely ignoring my silent plea. I dropped my gaze and forced myself to speak. "Well, I guess I'll be leaving her in your hands." "Don't worry," Robert said with a thin smile, patting my shoulder. "I'll take much better care of her than some kid from the sticks ever could." "You've got a bit of a chip on your shoulder, don't you?" he continued. "Do you have any idea how you landed your current job?" The whispers from the other guests swelled around me like a rising tide. My brow furrowed, my heart starting to pound. I remembered finding the listing for this job my senior year of college. It was a Fortune 500 company, and the competition had been insane. I had gone through round after round of interviews to finally get that offer. Getting into this company, making a life for myself in New York City on my own terms, it was the thing I was most proud of. I knew every step of that hiring process. I hadn't used any of Ava's connections. Seeing the confusion on my face, Robert let out a cold laugh. "Ava pulled the strings for you. Otherwise, did you really think you could beat out all those Ivy League grads?" So naive. Ava, silent until now, finally spoke. But she wasn't defending me. She was twisting the knife. "Don't be too hard on him, Robert," she said. "For someone from his background, that pathetic pride is all he has left. All he has left is his pathetic pride." The words echoed in my head like a needle scraping against bone, lodging themselves in my memory. Someone else had said those exact words to me years ago. But back then, Ava had been the one to stand up for me. The first day of freshman year, I was immediately the odd one out in my dorm. They all had the latest suite of Apple products. I had a beat-up phone with a cracked screen. They compared their limited edition sneakers, while my entire outfit probably cost less than $40. There were 4 of us in the room, and it was clear the other 3 were all from wealthy families. The second month of freshman year, my roommate, Alex, claimed he'd lost $1,000. Naturally, I was his first suspect. In his mind, I was already guilty. He didn't press the issue, probably because $1,000 was nothing to him. But for the entire next month, I had to put up with his constant passive-aggressive jabs. Coming from nothing, I couldn't afford to get into a fight I might lose. The consequences were too high. So I endured it, but everyone has a breaking point. During a campus event, a girl tripped and fell in front of me, and I instinctively helped her up. When she later realized her phone was missing, my 3 roommates immediately pointed the finger at me, adding that I had a history of stealing money from the dorm. My denials were useless. They only fueled more gossip and accusations from the students around us. A crowd started to form, and I felt like I was drowning in their cold stares, their sneers, their suspicion. Every memory of being looked down on came rushing back at once. I finally snapped. I threw a punch at Alex, and the whole thing exploded into chaos. The noise brought Ava running. She rushed into the middle of it and pulled Alex and me apart. She wasn't tall, but in that moment, she seemed like a warrior, shielding me completely. She pulled out her phone, started recording, and pointed it right at Alex. "You're saying he stole your money," she said. "Do you have any proof?" "Of course I do," he started. But when he saw the camera on him, he froze and stammered. "Well, I mean, he's the only one in our dorm who's completely broke." "So you have no proof," Ava stated flatly. "What you're doing is called slander. You get that?" Alex shot back. "I was just trying to protect his pathetic pride. For a guy as poor as him, that's all he has left." Ava held me back, stopping me from lunging at him. Her voice was low, but it carried clearly across the quad. "So what if I said you're the one who misplaced the money?" she countered. "Or that you took the phone? You're playing the victim, but maybe you're the one who should be accused." Alex frantically denied everything, but the students around us were already whispering. The mood was shifting. The more he tried to explain, the more flustered he got, while Ava just smirked. "What's the matter? A rich kid like you can't handle a little suspicion? Did I hurt your pathetic pride?" In the end, the girl found her phone in a hidden pocket of her own purse. Then, with a crowd of students watching, Ava marched Alex back to the dorm to find his money, recording the entire search. He eventually found $1,000 under his own locker and had to apologize to me in front of everyone. With the truth revealed, the whole spectacle was finally over. I don't remember much else about that day, but I'll never forget the image of Ava standing up for me in the sunlight. "Don't be afraid," she had said. "I've got you back." The same person who once protected me was now using those words to cut me down. And just last night, she had been clinging to me as needy as a child. Last night, she was curled up in my arms, playfully demanding a romantic birthday celebration at my apartment. Now, less than 24 hours later, the woman in front of me was a complete stranger. I slowly uncurled my clenched fists, casually picked up a drink, and stepped forward. "This is a big day for you both," I said. "I wish you a lifetime of happiness." I downed the drink in one gulp, turned without another glance at anyone, and walked out. The second the door closed behind me, the tears started to fall. I stumbled back to my apartment, trying to ignore the sharp pains in my stomach. I pulled every bottle of liquor out of the cabinet and started drinking. The room was dark, lit only by the sliver of moonlight filtering through the window. It faintly illuminated the proposal scene I had spent all day setting up. I just sat there on the old couch, in silence, all night long. At my feet lay the bouquet of roses I had bought for her. Compared to the ostentatious arrangement at the gala, my bouquet looked small, cheap, and frankly, pathetic. I pulled the ring from my pocket. The 3-carat diamond shimmered faintly in the moonlight. It was nothing compared to the 10-carat monster now on her finger. I set the ring gently on the coffee table. In the suffocating silence of the room, a bitter laugh escaped my lips. It was a laugh full of scorn for my own naive, foolish heart. Ava and I were from two different worlds. She told me from the beginning that she had an arranged fiancé. Whenever she brought him up, she would always add, "My family arranged it. But I'm a rebel. I only want to be with you." But deep down, I knew we would never last. An ending like this was inevitable. After all, who really believes in the fairy tale of the rich girl and the poor boy? Even I didn't believe it. She was high society royalty, and I was just some kid who clawed his way out of a backwater town in West Virginia. We were never meant to be. But greed gets the best of you. I took a leap of faith, and reality slapped me right across the face. So I retreated, hiding away in this tiny, suffocating apartment. The pain in my stomach grew worse and worse, until everything went black and I collapsed. In a haze, I felt like I was back in that sweltering summer, the air thick with the buzz of cicadas. It was over 100 degrees, and I was covered in mud, my clothes soaked through with sweat and clinging to my skin. The sun was blinding, and a girl in a pale, yellow dress walked toward me, silhouetted against the light. "James! James!" I looked up at the sound of her voice. She was holding a parasol, smiling so brightly at me. That smile was like a ray of sunshine that lit up my whole world. "James, I saved you, so now you owe me. James, you're incredible. You're just like me. James, you have to promise you'll always stay with me." The first rays of morning sun slanted through the window, finding me on the cold floor. My phone lay beside me, the screen dark. No missed calls, no messages. Ava never came home. I pushed myself up, leaning against the wall, and made a cup of coffee. The bitterness coated my tongue and settled deep in my chest. It had never tasted so bitter. I finished the last drop, set the mug down, and pulled out a suitcase I hadn't used in ages. It was time to pack and leave. I had rented this place with my very first paycheck after graduation. The apartment was filled with traces of Ava and me. Every corner held a memory. If I stayed any longer, those memories would just become daggers in my heart. The suitcase had just hit the floor with a thud when the lock clicked. The door opened, and Ava walked in. "Going somewhere?" she asked. She had changed out of the extravagant gown from last night and was back in casual clothes. She looked at me with those clear, innocent eyes, as if she wasn't the same person who had accepted a proposal just hours before. All night, my mind had been racing with questions for her. But now that she was here, I had nothing to say. I grabbed the handle of my suitcase and moved to walk past her in silence. Ava grabbed my arm. "Why won't you say anything? Where are you going?" I pulled my arm away. "I'm leaving this apartment, and I'm leaving you." She froze, the weight of my words finally sinking in. Then she turned and shut the door. "I think we need to talk." She pulled my suitcase back into the living room and sat on the couch. "I haven't done anything wrong," she said. "And you're just going to leave without saying a word?" "You accepted his proposal," I shot back. "What am I supposed to do? Stick around for the wedding?" Ava glanced around the room and suddenly started laughing, as if I just told the funniest joke in the world. Her laughter died as quickly as it started, replaced by the same cold, distant expression from the night before. "We were never going to get married," she said. "You always knew that. Do you really think you could have gotten where you are today without my help?" she continued. "So right now, it's in your best interest to just behave." Her words hit me like a stone, shattering the last shred of my dignity. From the day I met her, I knew I was never good enough for a girl like Ava. And yet, she became my girlfriend. And from that very first day, I knew marriage was never in the cards for us. But her constant promises, the way she always said, "I only want to be with you," made me start to believe. I thought maybe we actually had a future. Looking back, it was all just a daydream. It was time to wake up. I tightened my grip on the suitcase handle. "I already quit my job," I said. "I'm leaving New York, and I'm leaving you." A flash of surprise crossed her face. She clearly hadn't expected me, the ever-obedient James, to be so decisive. She grabbed my arm again, her eyes welling up with tears. "James, my relationship with Robert is just for show, for business. Please don't go. Stay with me, please." The tears streamed down her face, making her look fragile and helpless. I sighed and picked up the small box from the coffee table, opening it. "This is the engagement ring I bought for you," I said. "If you agree to marry me, I'll stay." Her sobs caught in her throat, but she said nothing. It was just a test, and I already knew the answer. I let out a bitter laugh. "What's the matter? You won't do it." Before she could answer, I snapped the box shut and set it back on the table. "Since you won't marry me, I'm no longer willing to stay by your side." I raised my voice. "Ava, we're even." She just kept shaking her head, slumping onto the couch as if all her strength had left her. The heavy door slammed shut behind me. The apartment fell silent, except for the tiny, blinking light of the listening device hidden on Ava's belt. A month later, I was lying on a bed in a cold, damp room. Today was Ava's wedding day. The sunlight streaming through the window was blinding. I stared into it, picturing her in her wedding dress. She would be beautiful, ethereally beautiful. On the rickety table lay a medical report and a few scattered sleeping pills. All those years of sleepless nights, overtime, and side hustles had earned me nothing but 3 cold words: pancreatic cancer. Terminal. Elsewhere, sunlight streamed through the massive stained glass windows of a church, illuminating Ava's wedding gown. She was walking down the aisle on Robert's arm, stepping toward the life that had been planned for her since birth. Ava was finally getting everything she ever wanted. And at the same time, in this tiny, cramped room, I was slowly drifting into a deep, final sleep. On her honeymoon flight, Ava received the notification about my death. Her eyelashes fluttered, and her knuckles turned white as she gripped her phone. Robert noticed her reaction and looked up. "What is it?" Ava calmly locked her screen and forced a smile. "Nothing. Just spam." For a split second, a cold glint flashed in her eyes. I knew what it was. It was regret. But for me, it was too late for that to matter. When you don't cherish someone when they're alive, all the mourning in the world means nothing after they're gone. Sandra was the one who arranged my funeral. We had always been close, so she spared no expense on the burial plot, choosing a beautiful spot overlooking the Hudson. As if on cue, a gentle rain began to fall on the day of the service. Through the mist and rain, I thought I saw a figure in the distance. The silhouette looked just like Ava, but that was impossible. She was supposed to be on her honeymoon. After my death, Ava seemed to become two different people. By day, she was the powerful, decisive CEO of the Sterling Group, known for her sharp mind and ruthless tactics. By night, she transformed into the gentle, considerate, and dutiful daughter-in-law of the Vanderbilt family. The Vanderbilt elders disapproved of her career woman persona, so on weekends, Ava would make excuses to come back to our old apartment to work. Only here, in the apartment that was once ours, could she drop the act and be herself. After a few hours, she finally closed her laptop and stretched. "Finally," she sighed, "it's done." The excitement in her voice was palpable. She had obviously just closed a major deal. After her stretch, she called out, just like she always used to James, "Pour-moi un drink. I have something to celebrate." Her voice trailed off before she could finish. In the past, I would have called back from the living room, "You got it, coming right up." I would have played the part of a formal waiter, presenting her with a drink, and she would have doubled over with laughter every time. But now, the apartment was completely silent. She glanced toward the empty living room, and the reality of my absence hit her all over again. She quickly pushed the feeling away. Ava went to the liquor cabinet, poured herself a whiskey, and walked out onto the balcony. She stared, lost in thought, at the potted begonias, which were starting to wither. The begonias were her favorite, but from the day she brought them home, taking care of them had become my job. We'd even had a playful argument about it once. "Am I your girlfriend?" "Yes." "And shouldn't you be nice to your girlfriend?" "Yes." "And are these begonias my favorite flower?" "Yes." "So, shouldn't you help me take care of them?" "Yes." By the time I realized she had trapped me, it was too late. She was already snapping a picture of my annoyed but defeated face with her phone. We had both burst out laughing, and from then on, watering the begonias became my daily chore. Looking back on those sweet memories now, I can't tell if she was genuinely happy or if it was all just an act. Ava stared at the dying plants and said out loud, "James, what have you been doing?" "The begonias are wilting." As she said it, she glanced toward the living room, then froze. She picked up the watering can herself, humming a little tune as she watered the plants before heading to the kitchen. It was as if my death hadn't affected her at all. In the kitchen, vegetables were already washed, chopped, and neatly arranged on plates, ready for the pan. She set down her glass and expertly lit the stove. Then, out of habit, she called out, "James, hand me the vegetables." But the only answer in the empty kitchen was the sizzle of oil hitting the hot pan. She paused, took a deep breath, and casually tossed chopped onions into the skillet. A drop of hot oil spat from the pan, scalding the back of her hand. "James!" she cried out, a reflex born of pain and habit. But the room remained silent. No one rushed in to grab her hand, find the burn cream, and blow on the skin to cool it. The realization hit her. She turned off the stove and, fighting back the stinging pain, walked silently out of the kitchen. In the small apartment, Ava sat on the couch, completely still, as if frozen in time. I had been gone for over a month, yet everything was exactly as I'd left it. The proposal scene I'd spent all day creating was untouched. The path of rose petals still lay on the floor. The silver balloons still clung to the walls. Even the diamond ring sat in its box, right where I had placed it. As dusk fell, shadows crept across the living room. Ava remained on the couch, still as a statue, her face a placid mask, betraying no sadness. It made sense. A woman who could leave me so easily to marry someone else wasn't going to truly grieve for me. At most, she felt regret. Regret for stopping me at the gala that night. Regret for not keeping up the charade of the loving, dependent girlfriend. Her biggest regret was probably losing her obedient, ever-available fallback guy. My disappearance from her life was just an inconvenience, a muddy puddle she had to step through. I don't know how long she sat there, but she finally moved as moonlight began to fill the room. She stood up, walked over to a cabinet, and pulled out a camera from a drawer. The screen lit up, playing a looping slideshow of our life together. Photos and videos flashed before her eyes, one after another. Silently, Ava covered her face with her hands, but tears of regret still managed to escape through her fingers. The click of a light switch flooded the dim room with light. Robert was standing in the doorway. Ava's head snapped up, her face a mask of shock. "What are you doing here?" He didn't answer. He strode forward and snatched the camera from her hands. The sound of our happy laughter filled the silence, and his brow furrowed. "Is this your idea of work?" Forgetting the tears on her face, Ava jumped up to get the camera back, but Robert shoved her to the floor. "Give it back," she screamed. She pulled herself up using the couch and lunged at him again, but she was no match for his strength. He threw her back to the floor. His eyes then fell on the ring box on the coffee table. He flipped open the box, glanced at the ring I had bought, and sneered. "This is it? This is what you've been crying over for a month?" He threw the camera to the floor, and when Ava scrambled for it, he blocked her with his foot. "Enough, Ava," he said. "It's been a month. This little drama of yours has gone on long enough." Seeing the hatred and despair fill her eyes, he suddenly pulled her into a crushing hug, holding her so tight it seemed he wanted to break her. "Ava, I don't care what you felt for James. I love you. You're Mrs. Vanderbilt now. You're my wife." She shoved him away with all her might and slapped him hard across the face. "Get out," she shrieked. "You don't have the right to say his name." Robert stood there, stunned, his face a mixture of shock and rage. Then he turned and slammed the door behind him. His threats had clearly had no effect on her. The moment he was gone, she lunged for the shattered camera on the floor, clutching it like a lifeline. She pressed the power button again and again, but the screen remained black. It was dead, just like me, utterly lifeless. She had held it in for so long, but now the dam broke. Ava collapsed and began to wail. "It's all my fault," she sobbed. "I was so wrong. I shouldn't have done that to you. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I am sorry, James. I don't want any of it anymore. Please just come back. I'm begging you, please come back." Ava Hamilton, the sole heiress to the Sterling Group, had always been so capable, so independent. No matter the situation, she was always rational, calm, and in control. I had never seen her lose it like this. But no matter how loud she cried, the apartment remained silent. It used to be that the second her eyes got teary, no matter how ridiculous her demands, I'd give in before a single tear could fall. Now, watching her sob in empty air, all I saw was a pathetic display born of loneliness and despair. About half an hour later, the crying stopped. Ava washed her face, then picked up a framed photo of the two of us. She stared at it for a long time. "James," she whispered, "you would have understood." She carefully placed the frame back on the table, making sure it was perfectly straight. Then she put the broken camera into her purse, walked to the door, and turned out the light. On her way out, she grabbed the ring box from the table. On the otherwise spotless table, a single file remained. The cover page was a photograph of a much younger Ava. But the name printed below, it wasn't Ava Hamilton. It read, "Laura, female, resident of Oak Creek, West Virginia." Oak Creek. That was my hometown. My mind flashed back to the day I first met her. It was freshman orientation. I was carrying a worn-out backpack, trying to navigate the crowd to find the registration table. An upperclassman came over to help me with my paperwork. "Oak Creek?" he asked. "You're from West Virginia?" Just as I set down my pen, a radiant girl appeared in front of me. "Hi, she said with a smile. I'm Ava. That was the first time we met. I've replayed that moment in my mind 1,000 times since. Ava, standing there in the sun, was like a sudden burst of light that pierced the darkness of my narrow world. But by the time I finally managed to crawl out of my own shadows, I looked back, and she was already gone. Back then, whenever she was around, she was always saying things like, James, you're incredible, or you're just like me. I used to think she was just being arrogant, comparing me to herself to make herself look good. Looking back now, maybe I really was just another version of her. I knew I had to find out what was in that file. Sitting in the back of the cab, watching the familiar city streets fly by, I felt a strange sense of calm. When faced with absolute despair, most people think death is the only escape. I was no exception. That day, I had swallowed an entire bottle of sleeping pills. I lay down in that cold, damp, run-down room and waited to die. My life flashed before my eyes, a long road of hardship, of being mocked, of gritting my teeth and clawing my way up. I had given my all to play the part of the struggling everyman. But even the longest night eventually ends. I thought of my mother's comforting words, of Ava's smile, of all the times we had supported each other. Slowly, those memories began to push back the darkness. And in that moment, I was suddenly terrified of dying. But the pills were already working. My consciousness was slipping away, and I felt like I was being pulled down into a dark ocean with nothing to hold on to. Tears welled in my eyes as I prayed for someone, anyone, to find me before it was too late. But in that part of town, in those cheap apartments, everyone was too busy with their own struggles to notice someone else's. No one there had time to worry about a stranger. Just as my consciousness was about to flicker out for the last time, the door burst open and someone rushed in. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. Sandra was sitting beside me, watching over me while she worked on her laptop. She heard me stir and looked up, her eyes widening in surprise, then flooding with relief. You're awake. Are you thirsty? I'll get you some water. I nodded, watching her fuss around the room. The doctor said you can only have warm water for now, since they just pumped your stomach, she said. Let me get the temperature right. And if you get hungry later, let me know. But it has to be liquids for now. She kept talking, a constant, comforting murmur as she bustled around, getting the water just right. A warmth spread through my chest, a feeling of safety I hadn't experienced in a long time. Why was I in that old apartment? I asked. Sandra heard me, but didn't stop what she was doing. Don't you remember? I'm the one who found that place for you. It was back before I had even graduated, before I was officially on her team. My campus was a long way from the office, and I just needed a cheap place to crash. Sandra was the one who told me about those apartments. The place was a dump, cold and damp with peeling paint. But it was close to the office and the subway, and, most importantly, it was cheap. I eventually saved up enough to move out and get the small apartment I had with Ava. Sunlight streamed through the hospital window, warming the sheets. A small smile touched my lips. The people who cherish life most are usually the ones who have come back from the brink of death. I had stared at that pancreatic cancer diagnosis for a long, long time. Once I had calmed down, I finally told Sandra what I was thinking. I want to fight this, I said, meeting her eyes. Her voice was both soothing and resolute. Okay, she said. We'll fight it. In the days that followed, Sandra took me from one hospital to another for tests, and the results were not what I expected. It wasn't terminal pancreatic cancer. It was just chronic gastritis. Staring at the new reports, it all finally clicked. The original diagnosis, the one for pancreatic cancer, had been a complete fabrication. The hospital stamp was fake, the condition was fake, and the doctor's name on the report didn't even exist. After some pressure from Sandra and me, the doctor who had given me the fake diagnosis finally confessed. Ava made me do it, he admitted. She's one of the hospital's biggest investors. I couldn't say no. Hearing Ava's name felt like being plunged into ice water. So she really had wanted me dead. After we left the hospital, Sandra and I sat in silence, facing each other. After a long silence, Sandra finally spoke. So, what's your plan? I licked my dry lips. I'll give her what she wants. I had Sandra leak the news of my death to Ava, and together we staged a fake funeral. To make it all seem real, I even had Sandra drive out to Oak Creek to give my mother money for burial costs. Meanwhile, I was holed up in a small house Sandra had rented for me, focusing on getting better. By all rights, the lease on my old apartment should have been terminated, but Ava kept paying the rent. Through the hidden cameras she had installed, I could see everything she did in that apartment. I watched her work, stare into space, pace the floors at night, and break down in tears. I'll admit, watching her suffer like that gave me a twisted sense of satisfaction. But then one day, I saw a thick file on the surveillance feed, a file with her picture on it. I felt an overwhelming urge to know what was inside. The feeling came out of nowhere, but it was so powerful I couldn't ignore it. I went to the apartment and stood at the door, pulling out the key I had meant to throw away. It clicked. She had never changed the locks. I slipped inside, flipped the circuit breaker to kill the cameras, and locked the door behind me. I took a few pictures of the file with my phone, just to document how I found it. Then I picked it up and began to read. It was a detailed history of Ava's life for the past decade. It detailed her dramatic transformation from a small-town girl in Oak Creek, West Virginia, into the heiress of the Sterling Group. Back then, her name wasn't Ava. It was Laura. She had been a perfect bone marrow match for the Hamiltons' real daughter, Diana. Her parents had been paid a large sum of money to let her live with the Hamiltons for the donation. But fate had other plans. The night before the transplant, Diana's condition took a sudden turn for the worse. They couldn't save her, and she died that night. That very same night, back in Oak Creek, a fire destroyed her family's home, killing everyone inside. And so, Laura seamlessly, naturally, became the Hamiltons' new daughter. They sent her abroad to be educated, only bringing her back to the States when she was an adult, giving her a new name, Ava. Oak Creek, a little girl, a fire. The keywords pull me back into a hazy childhood memory. Back home, school wasn't a priority for everyone. There were always a few older kids who didn't attend, hanging around the school gates, looking for someone to pick on. One day after school, I heard a girl crying in a nearby alley. I hesitated. My first instinct was to just keep walking and pretend I hadn't heard anything. But something wouldn't let me, and I found myself turning down the alley. A small, skinny girl was pinned to the ground by 3 older boys. Half-smoked cigarettes lay scattered around them, and her arms were covered in fresh, red burns. Luckily, they were just cowards who were only brave in a group. I ran in and started swinging. They took a couple of hits, and that was enough to send them running off, cursing. I got a few scrapes and bruises, but nothing serious. I helped the girl to her feet, took her to the school nurse to get her burns treated, and then walked her home. As I was about to leave, she tugged nervously on my sleeve. "Are they going to come back for me?" I took her hand. "Don't worry," I said. "I've got your back." A few days later, she started waiting for me by that same alley after school. "Can you tell me your name?" she asked, tilting her head up to look at me. It felt a little strange, but I told her, "I'm James." She nodded, turned, and started to walk away, but then she looked back over her shoulder. "I won't forget you," she said, before turning and running off. The next time I passed by where she lived, the entire block had been burned to the ground. Soon after, I left Oak Creek for college in the city, and the memory of the girl from the alley faded away. I kept my head down, ready to just push past her and get out. But she blocked the door with a surprising amount of strength, refusing to let me by. As we struggled, she finally broke the silence. "James, how much longer are you going to hide?" In that instant, it felt like the world stopped. My hands fell to my sides. Ava reached up, pulled the mask from my face, and threw her arms around me. "I knew it," she sobbed, her tears soaking my shirt. "I knew you weren't dead." I gently pushed her away. "Ava," I said calmly, "it's over." "No, you don't know the whole story," she pleaded, reaching for my hand. I pulled back and took another step toward the door. Seeing my determination to leave, she made one last desperate attempt to stop me. "Do you remember that little girl you saved all those years ago?" That was me. Her words hit me like a physical blow, and my hand froze just inches from the doorknob. "James," she said, "there are things you don't know." After she became Ava, the Hamiltons raised her as their own. She went from being a small, timid girl from rural West Virginia to the heiress of the Sterling Group fortune. When she came back to the States for college, she ended up at the same university as me. At first, she just wanted to be near me, to repay me for what I'd done. But eventually, she truly fell in love with me. I told her we could fight for a future together. But years of living a life of privilege had made her dependent on her golden cage. She couldn't bring herself to give up the world that was handed to her. She wanted it all. She wanted to keep me a secret while going through with the arranged marriage to Robert. But Robert had already done his homework. He knew everything about her. That whole humiliating spectacle at the gala was Robert's design. He arranged for that emergency in my office, making sure none of my colleagues would be there. He had my coworkers sent away from the party and even had someone tell Sandra that I had taken the day off. My showing up at their engagement was a perfectly engineered coincidence. When I tried to leave, he was the one who dragged her over to confront me. Every cruel word she said in front of that crowd was a desperate attempt to protect me by placating him. The next day, when she came to my apartment, she found the bug Robert had planted on her. She had no choice but to continue the act, to say things that would push me away, to make me leave for my own good. It wasn't until she thought I was dead that she realized I meant more to her than all the money and status in the world. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at me, her voice choked with emotion. "James," she whispered, "can we please start over?" I looked away, letting out a long, heavy sigh. "Ava, nobody waits around forever," I said. "There's no going back." When I walked out of the apartment building, Sandra was waiting by the curb. She looked like she'd been there for a while. "How did you know I was here?" I asked. She just smiled and opened the passenger door. "A lucky guess. Get in." In that moment, I started to realize her feelings for me went deeper than just a mentor looking out for her protege. That night, Sandra cooked an incredible dinner. She called it my gastritis recovery feast. She even opened a bottle of good red wine. "Your stomach is finally healed," she said, raising her glass. "You can eat whatever you want now. Cheers." To keep my distance from Ava, I had been staying with Sandra throughout my recovery. She had taken care of everything, from my meals to my doctor's appointments. My doctor had put me on a strict, bland diet, no spicy or greasy food. Sandra was from Texas. Spicy food was practically in her DNA. But for my sake, she'd been eating the same bland meals right alongside me. "So now, your stomach is finally free," she said, smiling. I raised my glass. "Sandra, thank you for everything you've done for me. If it wasn't for you, I would have died in that apartment. You saved my life. If you ever need anything from me, anything at all you have to do is ask." Cheers. After a glass of wine, a light flush appeared on Sandra's cheeks. She poured herself another full glass. "There's something I need to say to you," she said. She held her glass, her eyes serious and direct. "James, I worked with you for 3 years. I know who you are. You're strong, but you're also deeply insecure. You're talented and you're proud. You can make small talk with anyone. You seem to get along with everybody. But the truth is, you don't let very many people in. You know your own worth. You're always calculating who can be a useful friend, who could be an asset. Your relationship with Ava was the only time in your life you ever gave in to pure desire. But James, what you really need is a partner, an equal, someone who can stand beside you. And in terms of capability, personality, even looks, I'm the perfect fit. So, I want you to seriously consider me. You don't have to give me an answer right now. I want a real answer after you've thought it through, not just something to placate me. This one's to me." I watched as she downed a glass of wine, and I could feel my ears burning. Her words had stripped me bare, layer by layer, leaving me completely exposed. She had laid all her cards on the table. Now it was my turn. For the longest time, she had just been my boss, experienced, brilliant, and always unshakably calm. At work, she was the one who always closed the biggest deals. I had only ever seen her as a capable and trustworthy mentor. But over these past few weeks, watching her take care of me, helping me navigate the wreckage of my life with Ava, I started to see that underneath the corporate armor, she was just a person, a woman only 3 years my senior. She's the kind of person who gets giddy over finding a good coupon, who blushes when her favorite TV couple finally gets together, who sobs her heart out during sad movies. She was right. I've always known exactly who I am, where I stand, and what I need in a partner. Ava was a dream, a reckless fantasy from when I was young and foolish. Now that I was awake, all that remained was the unbridgeable chasm of reality between us. Night fell. I lay in bed, the cool breeze from the open window making the curtains dance. Before I knew it, the sun was rising. I hadn't slept at all, but I felt strangely energized. By the time Sandra woke up, I was already showered and dressed. She looked at me, surprised. "Where are you going so early?" "Job hunting," I said. "I already ate. The breakfast on the counter is for you. Don't forget to eat." I grabbed my resume from the table and headed out. My old firm had a solid reputation, and with my track record and experience, it didn't take long to find a new position. On my third day, my new boss assigned me to a project. The client was the Sterling Group. I froze when I saw the name. My first instinct was to have nothing to do with Ava ever again. But Sandra encouraged me to take it on. From a career standpoint, James, the Sterling Group is the biggest player in the game, she said. Landing this account would be huge for you. You have to understand, in this business, maximizing your advantage is everything. I have faith in you, James. I know you can manage your feelings and get the job done. Sandra's words snapped me out of it. If I was going to stay in this industry, I had to move forward, even if that meant facing Ava. The project went smoothly. Through hard work and collaboration, we hit every deadline. I did my best to avoid Ava during our meetings at the Sterling Group headquarters, but I knew a face-to-face encounter was inevitable. "It's been a while, James." There she was, sitting at the head of the conference table, looking poised and powerful. As our colleagues watched with curiosity, I unbuttoned my suit jacket and took a seat across from her. "Ms. Hamilton," I said coolly. "It has been a while. Our last interaction wasn't exactly pleasant," I continued, "but I'm fully committed to this project's success. I trust we'll have your full support, Ms. Hamilton." My team members exchanged knowing glances. "Oh, so you two have worked together before," one of them murmured. Ava understood my subtext perfectly. "Of course," she replied smoothly. "Business is business." The meeting went off without a hitch. But during the coffee break, Ava cornered me by the restrooms. "You seem to be doing well for yourself, James," she said. "I am surprised." I kept my head down, washing my hands. "You flatter me, Miss Hamilton," I said nonchalantly. I dried my hands and moved to walk past her. But she stepped in front of me, blocking my way. She leaned in close, her voice a low whisper. "James, I don't believe you feel nothing for me." I took a step back. "What you believe is your business," I said. "My business is getting this job done." Maybe my retreat actually stung her. Her eyes grew red around the edges. "If you really don't care," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "then why are you wearing that tie? Don't tell me you forgot. It was my birthday gift to you." I glanced down at my tie. She had given it to me for my 20th birthday. I was desperately looking for an internship back then, and I had saved for months just to buy a single decent suit. I had no idea how to tie it properly. One of my professors saw my mangled attempt and told me I'd be better off not wearing one at all. On my birthday, Ava handed me a small box. "You need a tie for your interviews," she said. "If you're going to wear a suit, you have to do it right. Here, let me." On the day of my big interview, she tied it for me perfectly. "Don't be nervous," she said, adjusting the knot. "This tie costs more than a used car. The interviewers will just assume you're some rich kid playing at being poor. All you have to do is act confident." She didn't have to say more. I understood exactly what she was doing. A guy like me could save up for a decent suit, but never for an accessory that cost a fortune. Someone who was actually struggling wouldn't waste their money on something so trivial. It was a signal. I don't know if it was the tie or the confidence it gave me, but the interview went perfectly. I got the internship. I had always believed I got that job on my own merit. It wasn't until the day I quit that Sandra told me the truth. "You're talented, James. There's no doubt about that," she said. But so were a dozen other candidates. Some of them even came in with their own client lists. They chose you because of the tie. It wasn't about the price tag. It was because the knot was perfect. A perfect Windsor knot. In the end, I got my foot in the door because of her. I looked at her defiant face. Ava, I was grateful for your help back then. I truly was. But I wear this tie to remember my first real success. If that gives you the wrong idea, you can have it back. I took off the tie and pushed it into her hand. Excuse me, I said, and walked past her. Ava was left standing there, stunned. She didn't bother me again after that. When I got home that night, the tie was sitting on my table. I picked up the box. It was neatly folded inside, but I knew it was the same one. Sandra came out of the kitchen and saw me holding it. Ava asked me to give that back to you, she said. She said she's not petty enough to take back a gift. I set the box down. You saw her today? Yeah. She asked to meet for a coffee. She didn't give you a hard time, did she? Sandra sighed. No, not really. We just talked. Now go wash up. Dinner's almost ready. After dinner, I cleared the table while Sandra pulled out the game controllers and fired up the console. Like most guys, I love video games. But Ava hated them. To please her, I had deleted all my games and sold my console. As an heiress in training, her idea of recreation was golf or horseback riding. She found video games loud, childish, and a complete waste of time. She couldn't even stand to watch me play. She thought it was a pathetic waste of a life. Honestly, if the gaming industry wasn't so profitable, I doubt she ever would have approved the Sterling Group's investments in it. Sandra was the complete opposite. She wasn't a huge gamer, but she embraced my hobby. She even started studying walkthroughs and strategy guides so we could play co-op together. When she first started, her clumsy controls and random friendly fire were so bad, I'd burst out laughing. But she never got frustrated. She just laughed along with me and kept playing. I finished the dishes and walked into the living room. Sandra's face lit up. Hurry up. I just learned a new combo, she said, handing me a controller. This is going to blow your mind. I took the controller, smiling. All right, show me what you've got, champ. The night outside was quiet, but the apartment was filled with the sounds of our laughter and the game. Down on the street below, Ava stood under a lamppost, staring up at our brightly lit window, her eyes filled with a deep, unspoken longing. She didn't move until our lights finally went out. She looked down, kicking a small stone on the sidewalk as silent tears fell. With a long, heavy sigh, she turned and vanished into the darkness. I didn't hear from Ava again after that. The day our project officially wrapped, I got a text from an unknown number. I am divorced. Can we meet? There was no name, but I knew it was her. I locked my phone, turned it off completely, and went back to work. At lunch, I overheard some colleagues gossiping in the break room. Did you hear about Miss Hamilton? She's getting a divorce. I put on a surprised face and played along. They chattered on, and I just listened quietly. I never replied to her text, but I couldn't avoid her forever. I ran into her in the parking garage after work. Your boss didn't really have a file for you, she said as I got in her car. I asked him to call you down. Her voice was calm, even. James, I'm divorced. And now that it's done, I regret it all. When I married Robert, I told myself it was for the good of the company, for the merger. I'm not a real Hamilton, but they were so good to me, I felt like I owed them. But I see now that it was my choice. I chose this. Everyone weighs their options. We all do what we think is best for us. But sometimes the smart choice isn't the right choice. And James, I made the wrong choice. The only time I ever felt like I could be myself, without any masks, was when I was with you. Don't worry, I'm not here to beg. I just wanted to give us a proper ending. Today is about saying goodbye to the person I used to be. From now on, I'm going to be Ava Hamilton, the person they need me to be. Goodbye, James. She hit the gas, and the car sped out of the garage. I stood there for a moment, then called out to the empty air. Goodbye, Ava. A year flew by in the blink of an eye. On New Year's Eve, I took the day off work. When Sandra got home that night, I was waiting for her with a huge bouquet of flowers. Her eyes instantly welled up, and she broke into a smile like a teenager who'd just been asked to prom. As the countdown began, we stood on her balcony, my arm around her shoulders. We watched the fireworks explode across the night sky and raised our glasses. Happy New Year, we said in unison. After the last firework faded, I leaned in and whispered in her ear, I'm so lucky to have you. She looked up at me, her eyes shining. I'm the lucky one, she said. You finally saw me. Sandra's perspective. When James started at the firm, he was just an intern, but he reminded me of myself at that age. He was ambitious, hardworking, and had a fierce, quiet pride. Maybe it was because we were so similar, but I found myself drawn to him right away. I'd heard he was connected to Ava Hamilton, which initially put me on guard. People who have had to fight for everything tend to be wary of those who use connections. But as I got to know him, I saw that James was sincere. He didn't have a single entitled bone in his body. I was the one who called James and asked him to cover the Hamilton Gala at the last minute. And that night, I watched him endure the most humiliating moment of his life. I couldn't help but feel partly responsible. When he tried to resign, I did everything I could to make him stay, but his mind was made up. I had no choice but to accept his resignation. I was worried he might do something drastic, so I checked in on him almost every day, texting and calling. Then, on the day of Ava's wedding, he just disappeared. I tried everything, but I couldn't find him anywhere. Finally, I remembered that rundown apartment he'd lived in when he first started. It took me a while to find it again. When I got the door open, he was already unconscious on the floor. When I found the diagnosis for pancreatic cancer, my heart just broke. I couldn't even speak. But then, to my relief, James agreed to fight it. I took him to get second and third opinions. The diagnosis changed. It wasn't cancer, it was severe gastritis. The relief I felt was immense, like a physical weight had been lifted off me. But James decided to use the situation. He wanted to let the misunderstanding continue. He asked me to leak the news of his death to Ava, and he had me help him stage the whole funeral. To make it all convincing, I even drove out to West Virginia to visit his mother. I spent a few days with her, and she told me all about what James was like as a boy. He had been such a sweet, gentle kid. Something along the way had changed him, made him so quiet and lonely. After he disappeared again, I had a hunch and went to wait outside his old apartment. Sure enough, Ava showed up not long after. I knew then that he had to be inside. When he finally walked out of that building alone, I was so overcome with happiness I could barely breathe. I knew I was in love with him, but as an adult, you learn to keep your feelings hidden. I acted casual, opened the car door, and told him to get in, just like any other day. That night, fueled by a little wine, I laid it all out for him. I didn't let him answer right away, but I was sure, deep down, that he would choose me in the end. Because I was the one who was right for him, the one who was actually good for him. He didn't want to take the Sterling Group project at first, but I knew it was a critical opportunity for his career. I knew he was just afraid of facing Ava. But learning to make pragmatic decisions is part of growing up. So I pushed him to take the job. The day James had his big meeting at Sterling, Ava came to see me. We had a very honest conversation. As she was leaving, she handed me the tie. I think she knew then that it was truly over. Honestly, I don't care about their past. But during our talk, I learned something important. It was Robert, not Ava, who had orchestrated the fake cancer diagnosis. I never told James, because at that point, the chasm between them was far too deep for a single medical report to fix. In the months that followed, James and I built a life together, a life without Ava's shadow. Then, on New Year's Eve, he gave me a surprise I never expected. Just as I knew he would, he chose me. And even though I had been certain of the outcome, in that moment, I was so happy I felt weak in the knees. As the clock struck midnight, I saw Ava turn and walk away from our building. I looked through the window and saw James, completely lost in the happiness of the moment. I knew this was the star of our story. This story is about the struggle between desire and reality that lives within each of us. James's revenge, Ava's compromise, and Sandra's pragmatism are all choices we might make. It reminds us that our deepest pain comes not from the world around us, but from the scripts we write for ourselves and the self-imposed prison of believing we have no other choice. May we all find the courage to drop the script and pick up the pen, because a real life only begins the moment we stop playing a part and choose to be authentic.